Hi, my name is Courtney Booth, and I am doing my project on dining information and etiquette around the different cultures. Table manners are the best way to show respect in someone's country, and I think it's very important. I've been in the hospitality industry since the age of 14. I've worked at my aunt and uncle's restaurant at that age in Las Vegas, Nevada. I also was a bar manager and a server in Florida, in South Florida. And now I'm in beautiful Vermont as a general manager of a sushi restaurant in Stowe, Vermont called Sushi Yoshi. The four cultures that I'm going to touch base on are the Chinese culture, the French culture, the Chilean culture, and the Italian culture. Since I work at a Chinese restaurant, I grew a friendship with the Chinese chefs in the back of the kitchen. So they have taught me a great amount of their culture, and I am very blessed to have been a part of that for as long as I have been so far. The Chinese culture is built on tradition. So their dining etiquette is always very traditional. When they're eating in the back of the kitchen, they always are in groups. So they always have set times that they eat. They eat at 10 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and 8 o'clock. No matter how busy it is in the restaurant, they always eat at those times. It's always a shared bowls and shared plates. They just have their own that they kind of scoop it onto their own plates. But it's more of like a family style. And then that's how they build relationships in their culture. The standard eating procedure in their culture is to eat with the bowl or the plate very close to your mouth, like this, kind of where you can't see your mouth at all. And you kind of use your chopsticks as more of a spoon technique rather than picking up chopsticks and eating it. So they eat the food like this. During breakfast, they usually eat, it looks like rice, but more of like a porridge rice, very soup-like material. They'll usually eat that with a banana or bread, which bread for breakfast is not really traditional in their country. I think that's the more of the American side of them. For lunch, they usually have these little buns that they put in the steamer that have either meats or veggies or something like a sweet jam in the middle, and they usually eat a couple of those for lunch. And for dinner, they have a huge three-plated meal all together, which I find very awesome because most people don't ever eat with their families anymore, or like myself, I eat standing up because I'm in the hospitality industry and I never have time to eat. So it's really cool. As far as your chopsticks go, it's very bad-mannered if you play with your chopsticks or if you cross them or if you stick them in your bowl of rice standing up like this and just, I don't have rice right now, but if I did, they would be standing up, and that's not acceptable in their culture. When you're eating, you're going to want to make sure that you touch the food to your plate first before it enters into your mouth. Belches and many noises when you're eating is considered satisfaction. So when you're slurping your noodles or burping, that's very much acceptable in their culture, which is not most in other cultures. Making a mess around the table serves a similar purpose, just like finishing your mainly most of your food. It's satisfaction, and that's very acceptable. Food is a central part of the Chinese culture. Breakfast is usually not a big deal. Like I said, they only have a small bowl of the porridge rice material. They usually have some snacks, but for the most part it's like a slice of watermelon or fruits. Breakfast in their culture, not at Sushi Yoshi, but their culture is breakfast at 9 a.m., lunch between 11 and 12, and dinner from 5 to 9. I put tipping in in all of the cultures that I talk about because it's very important to know the tipping procedure in each culture. In America, it's usually 18 to 20%. In China, tipping is tricky because it's officially forbidden by the government. So most restaurants add a 10% service charge, but for the most part that doesn't even go to the server. But you can add your own if you leave cash or their currency. Usually the server is allowed to take that. Another etiquette is very important to know is when you order fish in China, you never want to turn over the fish. It's considering that you capsize the boat by turning it over, meaning that you're wishing for the fishermen that catch your fish to be stuck in Davy Jones' locker. They have a thing called birthday noodles in China, where the birthday girl or boy slurps a bowl of the noodles, and it symbolizes longevity, a peaceful, amazing life. Tea tapping is a must. So if you have tea around the table, you're always going to want to continuously pour the tea. It's considered the meeting is to show thanks that you're enjoying the tea, and you never want to let it run dry. You're always going to want to refill it. And always order an even number of dishes. It's the odd number of dishes symbolizes death, so that's very important to know in their culture. The next culture I'm going to talk about is France. In France, all establishments post their menus on the outside of the building. So before even entering into a restaurant, you know exactly what they have for food. It's either a la carte or fixed price. When you're at a restaurant or even in someone's home in France, you're going to want to wait before eating until somebody comes over and says, "Bon appetit." So in their culture, it's a little different than the Chinese, obviously, because they use fork and knife, and the Chinese culture uses chopsticks. So in the French culture, your right hand is always going to hold your knife, and your left hand's always going to hold your fork. You're never going to want to swap them out. That's not acceptable in their culture, and they kind of look at you like you're doing something wrong. When you have your setup, you're always going to want to work from the outside in. So the outside is usually your starters, and you're going to work your way into your entrees. When you're not holding the utensils, your hand should be visible above the table. You never want to put elbows, but at least visible upon the table. Never cut your lettuce. So when you're eating any sorts of salad, you're going to just want to fold your lettuce over and stab it and eat it that way rather than actually cutting your lettuce. So in the French culture, you're never going to want to ask for seconds. If they want to give you seconds, they'll obviously give it to you, but you'll never want to ask because that is bad etiquette. In France, splitting the bill is considered unsophisticated. Usually the person who invites you to lunch or dinner is going to pay for the bill, but you're going to want to at least make the attempt to offer to pay. In the French culture, bread isn't meant to be an appetizer. It's served to assist the food with the fork. So if you're not using your knife, you're going to use your bread, and that's sort of a utensil in their culture. In France, they really don't negotiate their orders, so if you have an allergy or if you don't want something in your meal, they're kind of going to look at you silly because that's not acceptable. The chef makes it one way, and he doesn't really, or he or she doesn't want to change it for one person, and that's usually how it goes. French usually drink mineral water, my apologies, or wine with their food. So in their culture, when you're pouring wine, you're going to want to twist to the right. And that's the same with the Italian culture. The Italian culture, you actually, if you twist it the wrong way, it's considered that you don't like the person that you're pouring the wine for. So for the French laws, tipping prices must include tax, but pocket change is left on the table for the server. They're going to, pretty much in their culture, you want to tip like 5%, just any small change that you have, because for the most part, it's included into your bill. So when you're going out to the bar, you're going to want to tip like 50-cent euro or $1 euro to show satisfaction. In the Chile culture, touching food with your hands is considered ill manner, so they always use fork and knife, whether it be for burgers, pizzas, French fries, anything that we eat with our hands here in the United States, they eat with a fork and knife. Some basic dining etiquettes in Chile are you're going to want to wait until you are shown where you should sit. The women always sit before the men. Keep your hands visible when you eat. Sometimes I always like to have mine on my lap, but you always want to keep your hands visible. Always use an utensil to eat. Avoid speaking with eating utensils in your hand. You're never going to want to talk and say, oh yeah, you. I mean, that's how it is in the Italian culture, but in Chile it's frowned upon. You wait for your toast to be made before taking the first sip of your drink. Most common toast, once you're done, salud. And you want to also lift your glass like I just did to show a sign of respect. So when you are finished with your meal, you're going to want to place your fork and knife on the side of your plate to show that you're finished eating. In Chile, it's customary to tip 10%. So, like in the United States, tipping 18 and 20% seems like not too much. In Chile, it's not even, it's half of that. It's only 10%. In big cities, you're going to want to tip in cash. In smaller cities, you're going to want to tip in cash as well, but for the most part, smaller cities, they don't have credit card machines, so you're going to always want to make sure you carry cash on you. And I feel like that's very important in any culture that you go to. In Chile as well, if you pour the bottle of wine and you pour it backwards, it's also a sign of dislike that the person you're pouring it for. When you're in Chile, you're expected to order 2-course minimum. So you're going to always want to order either an appetizer or entree and dessert or whatever that they have. In the Italian culture, actually you're supposed to order a 2-course minimum. In Chile, it's very acceptable just to order whatever you have. My apologies. In the Italian culture, you get served reds and whites while you're eating dinner. You usually start with a sweet and go from there. When you start eating, just like in the French culture, you're going to want to start your meal. Buon appetito. When you begin to eat, the Italians as well, they don't switch. They always have the knife on the right hand and the fork on the left, and they're laid on the side of the plates as shown. You always want to rest your wrist on the table, never your elbows. Always your wrist, like this. And you're always going to pass your dishes to the left, no matter what. So it's going to work clockwise. Never use a spoon to eat any spaghetti or any kind of pasta. You're never going to want to spoon and twirl your pasta. You're always going to want to place it on the side of the dish and twirl it that way and take the whole entire bite. No matter if you kind of have to do a Lady and a Tramp and slurp it all up once you're done. That's what they do in their culture. So most people call it sauce, but I call it gravy. Gravy is a huge part of, at least when I was growing up, my culture. They use the bread to kind of dip it in the gravy, but you're never going to want to take it around the bowl and pretty much completely finish your plate, because that's considered bad etiquette in their culture. The one who's inviting pays for the bill, but although, you know, you can always offer, just like in the other cultures that I have talked about. And in Italy, you're never going to want to ask for cheese. It is considered a sin, actually, and it's very frowned upon in their culture. So how they present the food and how they make the food is how you should eat it. Tipping in their culture is also 10%, and all prices include tax. And you would just want to leave a small tip in cash for most of the places that you attend. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for a great semester, and I hope you have a wonderful week. Thank you. Bye.